Hello, everyone. Welcome to another gardening Q&A live on White Baby Gardening and Worm Farm. Okay, I think I leave something very important behind. Just a minute. Today we're going to be doing part 3, the final part, in and care for them. So the first week we looked at what these plants repel, and then we looked at 6 of these plants, how to grow and care for them. And so today we're going to be doing the final 6. Okay, so without any further ado, we're going to get down into the question. Oh, hi, Sian. So how do you? It is grown from seeds, or you can purchase. It is grown from seeds, or you can purchase the seedlings. Now, when should you plant basil? It can be planted indoors 6 to 8 weeks before the last frost, or you can direct sow it outside after the last frost. Hi, Her Healthy Home. Hi, Mom. Right, so basil can be sown after the last frost outdoors, or okay, I'm buffering. Yeah, it is saying my internet connection is unstable. I think it is fixed now. Okay, good. Right, so how much sunlight does basil need? Does any of you grow basil, whatever the pronunciation is? Yes, so basil requires 6 to 8 hours of full sun daily, but it also does well in partial sun. Okay, you say you grow basil and white. Now, what type of soil do you grow your basil in? Basil like moist, well-drained soil. Now, when you're growing your basil, for those who do you grow it in containers or do you grow it in the ground or in raised beds? I do, but it's very hard in winter. Oh, okay. Does that mean that you keep yours indoors or outdoors? Okay, you grow it in container. They do better in container and raised beds rather than in the ground because in the ground it's not as well drained as when you grow it in raised beds or container. So for that reason, it does better. Okay, you have them indoors, but they're still struggling in the winter. Is that maybe because of lighting, or is it just too cold? Okay, so no, it's not. Oh, okay. What spacing does basil require when you're planting it initially? It is said that it's 1/4 inch deep and 10 to 12 inches apart. It's too cold. Okay. Yeah. So it is best to plant it quarter-inch deep and 10 to 12 inches apart. But that is for smaller varieties. For the larger variety, it requires 12 to 24 inches apart. Message deleted. Okay. Now, what is the moisture requirement for basil? It loves moisture, but the soil has to be well drained. You don't want the soil to be continuously wet, just moist. And so it is best to mulch around your basil in warmer weather, and this will help to retain the moisture. In hotter climates, it is a good idea to water it frequently because it loves the moisture. Now, when do you prune basil if you do? It is best to prune it after it has grown its first 6 leaves, and you want to prune it down to the second set of leaves because this will encourage it to start branching out. And every time a new branch comes out and it is about 6 to 8 leaves, then you're going to prune it like you did before, back down to the 2 lower set of leaves, and that will keep on encouraging it to branch out. And after 6 weeks, you want to remove the center shoot because this will prevent it from flowering early and encourage the plant to grow more. Let's see. Hi to Family Homestead. Very interesting live. Oh, thank you. I'm just going through and making sure I'm not missing anyone here. Okay, so yes, so you want to remove the center shoot because it will prevent it from flowering early. Let's move on to the next question. How do you care for basil in cold weather? If the plant is going to remain outdoor, then you need to cover it to protect it from frost, or you can harvest it, or you can bring the plant indoor. But as Ann White says, she's growing hers indoor and it is a bit challenging. Have any of you ever grown basil inside? And do you find it challenging as well, or do you find it easy to grow? Now, what are some pests or diseases that affect basil? Aphids and powdery mildew affect basil, along with a variety of fungal and bacterial leaf, stem, or root disease. So, how do you harvest your basil? When the plant is about 6 inches to 8 inches, then you can start harvesting the leaves. And the more you harvest leaves, the more the plant is going to produce foliage. And once the temperature reaches 27 degrees, then you can start harvesting regularly. And it's best to harvest it early in the morning because at that time the flavor is more concentrated in the plant. Hi, Russell. Right, so you harvest it early in the morning. That is the best time because the flavor is more concentrated then. And even if you're not ready to harvest your basil, but just to encourage it to start to continue producing foliage, then you will harvest and store the rest. And so that brings us to the next question. How do you store basil? Hi, Nikki. Right, so to store it, freezing is the best way because maintain the freshness of the basil and the flavor of it. So you can either quick freeze it or you can dry and freeze it. Let's see. So to quick freeze it, you want to chop it or place it whole in a airtight plastic bag and then freeze, or you can hair dry it and then freeze it. Of course, if you dry it, then it's going to lose a bit of its flavor. So fresh is always best. You can also, fresh is best, freezing it fresh. You can also cut it up and make little ice cubes with it. So you cut it up fine and you put it in your ice tray, put a little bit of water on it and freeze it as cubes, and then you can use it. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next plant, which is the bay leaf, which is also called bay laurel or laurel. So how is it grown? It is either grown from seeds or from propagation. Now, how do you grow basil from, sorry, we're not talking about basil anymore. How do you grow bay laurel from seeds? It can be grown from seeds, but it is not easy to germinate. Most times you can expect 50% of it to germinate. So it's better to plant it actually to get the seedlings and plant rather than trying from seeds. But if you're going to grow from seeds, then based on the amount of plants that you want, it is recommended that you double that amount when you're sowing the seeds to ensure that you get a reasonable amount. Let's see. You've never heard of bay laurel or bay leaf? Okay. Yeah. It is pretty good, and a lot of people use it in their kitchen, just putting it in the kitchen cupboards because it repels some of the house pests as well, like the weevil. So a lot of people use it for that, and it is a very good spice. Yes, bay leaf, but it is the plant is called bay laurel or laurel. Oh, you use it. Sometimes we plant seeds when it is dry. For the bay leaf, it requires cool, moist weather, native condition that it is used to. So cool, moist weather initially, and then followed by moist, warmer weather. So first you're going to place the seed in soilless growing medium. You can put it in a plastic bag, dampen it, add the seeds to it, and then you're going to put it in your fridge, to the back of your fridge where it is cooler, and let it stay there for up to 8 weeks because that's how long it usually takes to germinate, and that will stratify the seeds. But you want to check your seeds regularly to make sure that it has enough moisture, and every now and then you give it a little whiff to ensure that it does not run out of moisture, because as you know, with any seeds, if you allow it to dry off any at all, then the seed is going to die once the germination process has begun. Now, as I mentioned, it takes 8 weeks for it to germinate, but you want to wait another 2 weeks. And then once you see that the germination has started, then you're going to transfer the plant to 4-inch or 3-inch pots. For bay leaf, when you're growing it, the soil must be sterilized, the container must be sterilized, the any tools that you're using to grow it must be sterilized, because at this stage the seeds or the seedlings are very delicate. So what do you do if your bay leaf does not germinate in 8 weeks? You want to make sure, check again and make sure that your temperature is 40 degrees Fahrenheit. You want to make sure that the soil is moist, but not wet and not dry. You want to make sure that the growing medium, the pots and the tools that you're using is sterilized. And to do so, to sterilize these, not the soil, but the tools and the pots, a ratio of 1 part bleach to 10 part water is recommended. If after checking all these things it does not work, then you start the process all over again. Now, how do you propagate it from clippings? Thanks for sharing that information about planting bay leaf. Okay, you're welcome, Sian. Okay, so how do you propagate it from, or do you propagate bay leaf? Cut clippings that are about 6 inches tall with a sharp shear, and you want to make sure that your shear is sharp, because you don't want to damage the clippings that you're going to be planting. So remove all leaves except for the two top ones, and then you're going to dip them in rooting hormone, not the leaves that you remove, but the clippings. Dip it in rooting hormone and then plant it. You have to cover it with plastic to maintain the moisture and put it in an area where it is not exposed to direct sunlight. You also have to make sure that you keep the soil moist and at a temperature of maybe around 60 degrees Fahrenheit. Once you see where the plant has rooted, then you want to remove the plastic. And while you're waiting for the plant to root, to control the humidity, you remove the plastic for a little bit each day to control your humidity. Okay, so how can how big does bay leaf grow? Bay leaf can actually grow up to 60 feet, but if you're growing it in your garden and you don't have a lot of space, you can keep it at 6 to 8 feet by regularly pruning. So now we're going to move on to the third plant, chives. How many of you grow chives? Okay, so how is chives grown? It can be grown from bulbs, seeds, or by dividing the plant. You do, Sian. Okay. Let's see. Some plants will grow roots from a leaf planted in soil. Could bay leaf work like that? Um, no, because of the type of leaves. Most leaves that tend to grow roots actually have high moisture content in them. Bay leaf does not have a high moisture content, and the genetic makeup of it does not allow it to grow from leaf. And why it says I plant chives. Okay, have grown chives before. Okay, Nikki. Right. So yes, chives can be grown from seeds, bulbs, or by dividing the plant. Now, how do you grow chives from seeds? The seeds are sown indoors in March, and it can be direct sown outdoors, and you want to sow them thinly. Oh, that's good to know. Okay. Yeah, you want to sow them thinly, and they should be sown or planted 9 to 12 inches apart when you transfer the plant. So 9 to 12 inches is the amount of space that they need So when you're sowing the seeds, you want to very lightly cover it with compost or castings, because these material, they're very light, so the plant can push its way through the soil readily. So when you're transplanting to larger pots, you want to use like 4 inch. When you're transplanting to larger pots, you want to place 4 to 6 plants in each pot. After this Q&A, I will finish mixing 5 worm buckets, 3 buckets for breeders, 2 for coming out of hatchery, ANC and ANC in hatchery. I like chives with eggs for breakfast. Yes, it actually goes pretty well with eggs. Sound like you have a lot of work there to do, Russell. Don't worry, I'm gonna have to do the same. It's what, 5:30 almost here, and it's getting dark outside. I'm gonna have to go out and look after my worms now, because well, I had a rough day today. I wasn't feeling too well, so I didn't get to look after the worms today, so I'm gonna have to do it tonight. Anyway, yes, so when you're transplanting your chives, then you want to put 4 to 6 plants in each pot. Now, what temperature does chives prefer? It is 11:24 here. Okay. Yeah, you're quite a few hours ahead of us, and White. Or at least ahead of me. I don't know how your time zone relate to others. Okay, so what temperature does chives require when planting? Warm. Okay. It requires 18 to 21 degrees Celsius or 65 to 70 degrees Fahrenheit. It's 6:30 here. Okay, so you're 1 hour ahead of me, Nikki. Okay, right. Seedlings, however, require at least 10 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 10 degrees Celsius, which is 50 degrees Fahrenheit. You are transferring them initially. Now, what type of soil does chives require? You're ahead of everyone on the live and wide. Yeah, 5:25 where you are. Yep, 70 degrees and above. Okay, yes. So, how much sunlight does chives require? It requires full or partial sun. See, I know. Okay. Yes, so chives require full or partial sun. Now, how do you care for chives? The good thing with planting chives is that it requires very little care. You water it regularly when the season is dry, you fertilize it in the spring, and you thin the plant every 3 to 5 years to prevent it from becoming overcrowded. And you also have to replant it at least every 5 years and remove flowers to keep the plant productive. And then you deadhead the plant in the fall. So pretty much that's all the care that chives need. Now, when and how do you harvest chives? You want to cut the leaves as close as possible to the base of the plant and as often as possible. One of the things that I love about chives and other herbs like these is that when you cut them, they regrow very quickly, because it is somewhat like a grass that grows pretty fast. So they just keep growing. As much as you cut is as much as it grows. Lots of snipping. Yes. Right. So frequent Cutting off your chives encourages it to grow. Hi, Love Lady Gardening Project and more. It's nice of you all to be on the live. Right, so as we were saying, we were discussing the final 6 plants that repel pests from your garden in this series. Oh, hi, Helpy. You're finally able to make it. I'm glad. Yes, so we have looked at, let's see, we're looking at chives now. We looked at basil and we looked at bay leaf so far, and so we're continuing with discussing chives and how do you store it? Does any of you store chives? Or do any of you store chives? They are best stored fresh so that they can maintain their flavor. So the way I store the chive is to chop it and put it in a plastic bag and seal it and put it in the freezer. When I'm ready to use it, I just take a portion out. You can also use it to make ice cubes. Just cut it up, put it in your ice tray, put a little bit of water and freeze it. And these are the best ways that you can actually have fairly fresh chives and have the flavors preserved. I find that when I dry it out, it does not have a lot of flavor anymore, so I don't dry chives anymore. Okay, so we're going to move on to how mint is grown. How many of you plant mint and what type of mints do you grow? So far, I've only tried one variety of mint, spearmint, since I've been in this country. I do. Okay, and white, yeah. So far, but this year I'd like to try a wider variety of mints. See how that work out for me. Because I love mint, but the mint that I love most is not grown. It doesn't do well here. Not that I've ever tried it, but I know that it loves the heat. I bought a mint plant from a big box store. Okay, me too. Me. Yes, that is how I actually grow my mint too. I buy it from the store because I've never tried growing it from seeds. I've never even seen mint go into seeding. It is very invasive, better to plant in containers. I sent you tree mint. Okay, thanks and white. Yes, as Nikki says, it's best to grow it in containers because it is invasive and it has a very large root system. Pineapple mint is yummy. Oh, I can just imagine it is named pineapple after all, but I've never had it. I'd like to grow it though. It spread like crazy. There's some growing wild on the side of my driveway. Yes, invasive. Yes, the first time I planted mint here, because in Jamaica, when I plant mint, the space is there, so you don't really care about whether or not it spread, yes or no. But in a tiny garden that you have here, then you have to consider how much it spreads. And I tried growing mint outdoors. Well, I can't say this year anymore, it's last year. And I did a video on it where I showed the root system. I dug up the plant from my garden because I realized it was spreading and put it in container, and I showed the root system. And for the little patch of mint that I had at that point in time, the root had spread over 2 feet. I actually measured it. It spread over 2 feet, and if left, it would have spread further. So you have to be careful with it, as Nikki says. Let's see. Her Healthy Home says, I have to try that, Nikki. Okay. Russell, I use the wild mint catnip. Okay. Um, Pineapple mint. Wow. Honestly, I didn't know much about other types. Yes, mint, there's a very wide variety of mint. Mint is great in smoothies. Oh, I've never tried that yet. I'm gonna have to try that one. I would like to see what pineapple mint looks like. Okay. I can send you a picture of it, or you can Google it. I love the flavor of my water. I love the flavor to flavor my water with mint. Oh, so many interesting ideas. I will be growing a variety this year in containers. Mint is good for stinky breath. Yes. I would like to try a wide variety of them too. Okay, so mint is grown from cuttings and seeds or by dividing the plant. Now, what is the best time to plant mint? And White says, yes, I have it in smoothies and in my water too. And Joy says, I flavor my water with it too. Interesting. I will never think about doing that. Yes, sow the seeds indoors 6 to 8 weeks before the last frost, or you can direct sow it outdoors after the last frost. Now, what spacing does mint require? And this depends on the type of mint you have as well, because some of them can grow pretty big and pretty wide. So when you're sowing your seeds, you need to sow a 1/4 inch deep and make sure that the soil on top of the seeds are light, and you want to space them 18 to 24. The plant, you want to space them or thin them out to 18 to 24 inches apart. Now, how do you grow mint from clippings? Let's see. Springtime, yes. 70 and above. Okay. It does love the warmth, doesn't it? Okay, so how do you grow mint from clippings? Cut 6 inches. The piece is 6 inches, and you want to get it from the soft wood of the plant and plant it in potting soil. It can also be placed in a container with water and it will root, because mint is very easy to catch. And it requires full or partial sun. Now, how is mint grown from dividing? This one is pretty simple. You just gently dig up a portion of the plant, and preferably the younger part of the plant. You don't want to use the whole part because it's hard to grow. And place it in a large pot, and as we mentioned before, it has a large root system, so planting it in a larger pot works best. And you want to remove some of the roots before you actually plant it, and make sure that your soil is loose and well drained, because mint does not like a lot of water. And that's the next question: how often should you water your mint? How often do you water your mint? Okay, so once a week, right. Um, Once a week, that also depends on your climatic condition. So either you're going to water it once a week or you're going to water it whenever your soil is dry. So between each water, you have to allow the soil to dry out before watering it again, because mint will have powdery mildew, or it will have rot if you will give it too much moisture. So you want to make sure that the soil dries out before you water it again. Now, how do you harvest mint? Both the leaves and the flowers can be harvested so as possible, because this will encourage growth. Let's see. I planted mine in raised bed with tomato, beets, peas, beans. So I watered when I watered them. Okay. When the soil dries out. Yes. Cut the ends, most leaves. Cut the end, most leaves off. Okay, it's a question. Okay. So to harvest mint, you can harvest both the leaves and the clippings. You can, excuse me. Yeah, so how do you store it? Do you store mint, and how? Mint can be dried in well ventilated area, in a shaded area. It doesn't need to be dried in the light. And then you can store it in airtight container. You can even freeze it as well. Let's see. Do you use the stem? Yes, I use the stem, or just the leaves or flowers. I use both the stem, the leaf, and the flowers, because the stem has flavor in it as well. I do not store mint, but I should. Okay, so for Nikki, she used just the leaves. Okay, yeah. On why it says I use both. Okay, yeah. I actually store the stem. If the stem is soft, then I store it. If it is hard, I don't. Ah, okay, good to know. Okay, so now we're on to petunias. How is it grown? Does any of you grow petunias? I've never grown it before, but I did my research on it because it is among the plants that I am going to be into planting with my crop to control pests. So I got myself seeds and then I researched how to grow it. And it is grown from seeds mostly, but it can be grown from cuttings or or by transplanting it. So let's see. My plant went to flower this year, but I never consumed the flowers because the flies and bees and other pollinators loved it. I do not grow petunias. Okay, got to leave some for the animals, right? And especially those pollinators. Okay, so is petunias an annual, or is it a perennial? What do you think? Yes, it is actually a perennial, but in zones below. Let's see. Could you please remind me of the benefits of petunias? Okay, it acts as a repellent for a lot of the garden pests. So it repels asparagus beetles, It repels leaf hoppers, various type of aphids, tomato worms, and other pests. So I'll say that again. So leaf hoppers, asparagus beetles, aphids, tomato worms, and others. Oh, I was going to say annual. It is a perennial, but in zones below 8, so 8 and below, it is grown as an annual, but in 9 and above, it is grown as a perennial. So if you had said annual, you would still be correct. It just depend on the zone that you're in. Sometimes they do come back though, yes, because they are actually perennials, but they are grown as annuals. Looks like I need to get some more flower seed. I'm pretty sure I have all those pests. Oh, so it's an annual for me, 6A. Yeah, I would say an annual. Okay. Yes, so how do you grow petunias from seeds? 10 weeks before the last frost, you can start growing inside. It requires light to germinate it indoors. If you're planting it outdoors, then you want to do so after the last frost and make sure that you well water it. Keep it away from strong winds and plant it an inch apart. I imagine they'd be great to have like marigold because they are short. Yeah. Now, how much sunlight does petunias need? They actually require full sun, and if you're going to start them indoors, then they require soilless potting soil. Okay, so what type of soil does petunia need? You're in 7A. Okay. Those are some nice zone to be in. 7A, 6A, and all those. I'm in zone 3B, so it's pretty cold most of the time and a very short growing season. I'm so sad. Yeah. Anyway, petunias, one of the good thing about them is that they're not particular about the soil that they grow in as long as it is well drained. Now, how do you care for petunias? They do not require frequent watering. So that's one positive. You can save on water when you grow these. Now, when and how do you harvest? Oh, why am I going back to my child's question? Let's get that out of the way. Full sun. Okay, yeah. Petunias are tolerant to heat, and for that reason, they don't really require a lot of moisture. So if you're going to water them, make sure that the soil dries out fully before you water them again. If you're growing them in container, though, they tend to require more moisture because containers tend to dry out more readily. And if they're in containers, you also need to fertilize them once per month. If they're growing in the ground, then they don't need to be fertilized as frequently. So I'm going to share a few tips with you on about petunias. They tend to go leggy in the middle of by the middle of summer. So to avoid this, you want to prune it very often and to deadhead it and keep it watered whenever necessary because this will encourage it to grow more foliage and more flowers. Let's see. They do require deadheading. Yes. Avoid watering your foliage and the flowers of your petunias because this will help to prevent plant disease. Petunias, however, are known to attract slugs and aphids. Okay, so let's discuss rosemary, the lovely rosemary. How is rosemary grown? It is grown from seeds or cuttings or by transplanting. It is most successful though if you grow it from cuttings or you get the plants, the seedlings to transplant. When you're growing it from seeds, the germination rate is very low, 15%. Now, how is rosemary grown from seeds? Use seed starting mix and sprinkle the seeds on the surface of the mix and cover it with a plastic after you have moistened the surface of your soil. Just a small amount of moisture and then you cover it with plastic. Learn English at home. I love rosemary. Okay. Yeah, me too. Right, so cover it with plastic once you have sown the seeds and make sure that you give it light because it needs a light to germinate. And once the seedlings germinate, then you want to remove the plastic and harden it off outdoors before you transplant it. And you transplant it when the plant is 3 to 6 inches tall. I love, love, love. Me too. Yeah. Now, how do you propagate rosemary? We looked at growing it from seeds, but how do you propagate it? People make the mistake of overwatering rosemary. Yeah, but it doesn't require that much. I know it used to grow in the wild behind my husband's home when he was growing up, and it just grew there. They never watered it, not once, and it just stayed there and it grows. So it doesn't really require a lot of water. No, but then and again, most of the things that we grow in Jamaica, we don't really water it regularly. In fact, most people who farm don't water their farms in Jamaica. We depend on the rain, and there are times when you don't get rain, but you still don't water your crop unless you're having really dry season. So I guess I can't compare and growing the rosemary there to here. Now, how do you propagate rosemary? Get the cuttings that are about 3 inches, and you want to get it from the more vigorous part of your plant and remove the lower leaves about inch and a half up from the bottom, and you're going to plant that in well drained potting soil in pots that are about 3 to 4 inches in height. Water it and place it in partial sun, and it requires temperature between 60 and 70 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, so let's see. Does marigold require fertilizer? It does not require fertilizer often. You fertilize it if the plant look as if it needs nutrients, but outside of that, only when you're planting it initially would you add fertilizer. And the rosemary, when you plant it from clippings, it takes about 8 weeks before it, up to 8 weeks for it to grow its root, and then you can transplant it. Let's see. Right, not much water at all. Okay. Let's see where my hat now. Oh, often. Yeah, we're talking about rosemary. Now, how often should, can't see my own question. How often should rosemary be watered? Whenever the soil is dry. Yeah. Um, as you know, with any plant, if the weather is, if you're having dry weather, then naturally you're going to be watering it a bit more than usual. Now, what type of insect affect marigold? Sorry, not marigold, rosemary. Was I saying marigold all this time, or was I saying rosemary? Yes. So, what type of insect affect rosemary? For those who grow rosemary, have you ever had problem with pests? Soft stem is always better with these plants. They tend to grow or to root much readily than hard stem. You said it once before. Okay, yeah, my bad. Not talking about marigold, we're talking about rosemary. No pest for me. Okay, right. So, rosemary is fairly resistant to pests, but of course, they may be affected by spider mites, by scales, or mealybugs. I don't know what scales are, I've never seen them. I might have to go and research them to see what that looked like just in case when I plant my marigold I end up with scales. Have you ever seen scales, any of you, and what does it look like? My mom keeps it in a pot and inside during the winter, then out for the summer. I've never heard her mention pest. I would like rosemary this year. Me too. I would like to have it. Yes, marigold is. Oh, Marsha, it's not marigold. It is rosemary. I think it's time to go to bed. Oh no, I have work after. Too bad. Yes, I've had scales on my orchids. What does it look like, the scales? Yes, so the rosemary is pretty resistant to pests, but occasionally they may have it. Now, what disease affects I've never have pest problem with my rosemary. They don't even look like bugs. They look like little bumps on it under the leaves. Oh, I wonder if that's what I see on some plants. Uh, Sometimes I see plants that have little bumps looking stuff. Yes, I guess the name is fitting if that's what it looks like. I've never seen it in my garden, but I've seen plants with little bumps that looks very weird on them. I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to research it. On or under. Sorry. Okay. Yes, so marigold can be affected by powdery mildew. And that is one of the reasons why it is so important to make sure that you don't overcrowd your plants because it encourages powdery mildew, especially if the environment is humid. Now, how do you harvest rosemary and store it? Rosemary, not marigold. Yeah, I think I'm going crazy. It's a good thing the live is going to be ending soon. Oh, my poor brain. Often they are tucked into the space where the leaf meets the crown or stem. Okay, I'm gonna have to learn more about this scales. Okay, yeah. So, how do you harvest and store your rosemary? Rosemary can be harvested several times during the growing season, but each time you harvest it, you have to allow the plant to grow back to its full size before you harvest it again. And the flowers are also edible. I've never actually seen rosemary flowering. So, fresh cuttings can be kept in the fridge for up to 2 to 7 days and remain and maintain its flavor. But if you're going to keep it for longer than 7 days, then it is best to hair dry it in a shady area and then store it in an airtight container. And with that, we have come to the end of the six final parts: plants that can repel pests, how to plant and grow them. So, what do you guys have planned for your garden this year? Are you going to be doing anything different from what you've done in previous years when you're gardening? For me, I'm going to be doing quite a few things different. For one, I'm going to be growing more, or should I say, different types of vegetables. Too much and not enough. Okay. I'm making potting mix. Okay. Yeah. So for this year, I'm going to be planting a wider variety of vegetables. I usually interplant, but not a lot of things. So this year I'm going to be doing a lot more interplanting because, for one, I'm going to be doing that to control pests. Two, I'm planting more, but I don't have more gardening space, which means that for the plants that can be interplanted together, I'm going to be putting those together. And this year I plan to plant more of the things that I enjoy so that I can store them after I've harvested. So I'm really looking forward to the growing season. I'm so anxious to get started with the seedlings indoor, but as Indiana Backyard Gardening said in her video today, no matter how tempting it is, do not plant or start your plants earlier than you need to because it does not work out unless you're going to be using growing lights. I don't want to use too much growing light, so I might have to take her advice and wait. Let's see. I do plan to do things differently. Start my seedlings under light so that they don't grow leggy. Don't overcrowd my peppers so they'll actually produce. Plant more flowers and interplanting. Yes, I am too. Yeah, I am with you on that one, LP, about the planting more flowers, because I always tell myself that with the little garden space that I have, I don't really want to be using it to plant flowers, but then because of the benefits of planting flowers, they attract pollinators, they attract predators that feed on the pests, and they help to repel pests. So for that reason, I'm going to be sacrificing a bit of my vegetable in order to get those benefits. I will be planting less this year. Okay. Don't want to overcrowd the garden, do you? Yeah, so there's so much that I have learned in the last year about gardening. So I'm pretty excited to apply the things that I have learned, which is one of the reasons why I can't wait for the growing season to start because I want to put these things in practice and see how they work out. Yeah, because I am going to have far more time on my hand because my kids are being homeschooled. So, well, will I really have more time? At the moment, I don't even have more time, and the gardening hasn't begun yet. But yeah, I'm not no longer going to work, so I have a bit more time to focus on my gardening. Let's see, I planted a lot last year and I had a few pests, and my garden is rather small. Me too. I know. I know more thanks to you and other YouTubers. Okay, you're welcome, my dear. Was it too much? I can't wait to get back to Jamaica to start planting. Oh, my dear, you're not alone. I'd like to get back there to plant too because I can plant all year round. I don't have to worry about winter. And a lot of it is a lot more work growing things in these colder countries because you have to be worrying about covering plants, you have to worry about greenhouses, and a lot of the pests that we worry about here, a lot of them we don't necessarily worry about in Jamaica. Well, I left so long ago, I don't know if that is a problem now because I know that pests tend to travel from country to country. So I don't know, but I would rather be in Jamaica planting because I can plant all year round. And then I would be less stressed because it is just so relaxing when you're gardening. It's a nice way to get away from it all. I can see how easy it is to plant too much. I have to keep that in mind. Yes, one, there are so many plants that we would like to grow, and so we try to fit them in our garden, but the garden can hold only so much. And then we would like to have a good amount of each of the plants that we love, and so we tend to try to cram it into the little space, but it really doesn't work out because of the problems that it can cause. Like it can cause your produce to be smaller. Your plants are going to need far more nutrients. They're going to be fighting for nutrients. When they are so close together, they are struggling for the sunlight, so your plants tend to be leggy. um, Plant disease increase with how when your garden is overcrowded. So it doesn't really work out to overcrowd the garden. And so I'm going to be discussing some of that in this week's video. Yeah. So let's see what I have missed. It's very easy to do. I agree. Yeah. So this week's tomorrow's video is also going to be on what I am doing with the plans that I'm making for my garden, how I'm getting my seeds organized and stuff like that. And then Wednesday's video, I'm going to be showing you part one on Wednesday and part two on Thursday. Hi, Pit Stop. Yeah, so on Thursday, on Wednesday and Thursday, I'm going to have a two-part series where I'm going to be showing you what can be interplanted together and stuff like that. Let's see. LP says my peppers suffered because they were too close to tomatoes. Only produced a few peppers that didn't grow full size. Yes, and that is also going to be a point in either Wednesday or Thursday's video about peppers and tomato being planted together. Um, let's see. Got to run. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much. Bye, Nikki. Have a good night. Yeah, so there's a lot to look forward to this year. And let's see. Have a good night. Okay, just saying goodbye. Okay. Yeah, so there's a lot to look forward to this year. I'm going to be changing up my garden a bit. Well, not the orientation of the garden, that is fixed, but I'm going to be changing up what I plant where, stuff like that. So Should be fun. Should be a lot of fun. So, what are some of the gardening mistakes that you made last year that you won't be repeating this year? I know some of you mentioned overcrowding your garden. So, as I mentioned about some of the videos that I'm going to be having this week, one of the mistake that I made, it's going to be mentioned in the video, is planting things that should not be planted together. So that is one of the mistakes that I made, but after doing some research, I learned that I was doing it all wrong. So this year I have to pay close attention and make sure that I put the proper plants with their proper companion. Let's see. Overcrowding and overwatering. Yeah, I did a bit of the overwatering because some of the plants that I was companion planting together, although they grow well together, some requires moist soil and some requires dry soil. And because they were growing together, then everything got the same amount of water, which resulted in some of the plants ending up with plant disease and stuff like that. So this year I'm going to have to make sure that I don't overwater. Looking forward to the next video. Okay, yeah. It should be very interesting. It's gonna be I have what 18 different plants that I'm going to be growing that I'm going to be covering in those three videos, Tuesday to Thursday, and then how to grow them and what they can be grown with. So although it is 18 plants, it's gonna be covering a wide variety of plants that can be grown together. So stay tuned so that you don't miss out on that very important information. Better use of fertilizer. Okay, yeah. One of the things I know, sometimes we are so anxious to see our plants grow. Sometimes we might use a little too much fertilizer. Sometimes we might try to stretch out the fertilizer because it is expensive. So the plants don't get enough. Yeah, for me, one of the things that I'm guilty of doing is with my castings, although it is not really a problem, but it can be considered a waste, is to use a lot of castings in the garden. Now, if I'm using it to amend the soil, then it doesn't really matter how much of the castings I use. I can use just about any amount, really. But if I'm just using it to fertilize the plants, then I should cut back on the amount that I am using. The good thing about the castings, though, is that no matter how much you use, it does not damage your plants. It doesn't burn the plant. So I like that aspect of it. And most fertilizers, you cannot put them directly against the plant. But with the worm castings, it doesn't really matter if it is resting directly against the plant. Just as long as you don't go too high on the stem of the plant because you don't want too much moisture against the stem of your plants. Okay, so I think if there are no more questions, that we are at the end of this live. It was so nice for all of you to join me. I'm glad that I was able to share some practical information. I'll just wait a little bit to see if there are any questions, and if not, then I'll sign out. Okay, so there seem to be no more questions, so I'm going to be saying good night, and I hope you enjoy what's left of the day. Good evening. Have a lovely evening, Pit Stop. Weekly worm casting tea fertilizer. Oh, nice. Yeah. Good night, everyone. Says Unwhite LP. Thank you so much for this. Thank you so much. This was very helpful. Good evening. Okay. Yes, I'm glad you were able to enjoy the live. Weekly worm casting tea fertilizer. Very informative. Thank you. Oh, you're most welcome, my dear. See. Have a good night and stay well, everyone. I'm looking forward to your next videos as well. This will be my first year with worm castings. Good to know I shouldn't overdo it because I would. Well, it doesn't really matter how much you add to your plants, really, but if you're not adding a lot for soil amendment, then you don't want to put too much castings because then you would be wasting castings that you can use later on. Yeah. So have a good night. I am closing down now. Stay safe, everyone.